They were making the number 2, the Chicago, because it really was the plane that finished, the trip around the world and became the command plane. So that was very appropriate. But I bent their arm a little bit. I said, yeah, but we're building the Seattle, and this is where we live, and so they did the Seattle. So anyway, that's what it was.
Which one was in Santa Monica?
Oh, the New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Yeah.
Number 4.
Yeah, number 4. I called them up one time. I said, can I come down and look at your plane? And they said, well, we just had a bunch of people down here going over the plane and everything, and it's back in the storage, and I talked and I talked and I talked. You can't imagine that, can you? And they said, well, when would you like to come down? And I said, I don't know. This was like Thursday. I said, well, how about the end of next week? That gives you time to get out the nets and protect everything, And they said, well, how about Monday? I said, Monday? Why Monday? And they said, we just paid $60,000 to have a team of experts, assess our plane as a project for preservation. And they said, you're telling us stuff they didn't tell us in their report. And I said, that's easy. They're forensics. So they're just looking at the body, and what you got's all they know. I'm building the airplane. I know the physical airplane. I know the history of the airplanes, and I know the history of the flight. And so I'm gonna know more than they know. It's stand to reason. And besides, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've got this. I've been to the Air Force. I was at the Air Force and I was there for a couple of days at the archives. And I said, can I look at this? And I said, I hate to be a pest. I know I'm wearing you out. And they said, oh no, we consider you the world expert on the flight and the airplane. I said, oh, my head goes, and it went, and I said, I smiled and I said, well, can I have the stuff? In other words, I'm over the big head thing. Let's get on with, what we're doing here. Any rate, no, they've been very generous. So is the Smithsonian. But at any rate, I went down there and I said, the first thing you have to determine is how much the airplane's original. And he said, oh no, it's never been restored. And I said, what do you want it to represent? Before the trip or after the trip? Well, of course, after the trip. I said, so you see these exhausts? Those are de Havilland DH4 exhausts. That's what they started with. But in Shanghai, they kept cracking and they replaced them with straight pipes. So you got the wrong exhaust on your airplane to start with. And then I said, do you see these belly panels? Yes. I said, they're all bogus. What? And I said, here's what they're supposed to look like. I had taken pictures of Smithsonian. So here's what you're supposed to look like. Oh, can we have copies of those? No, you can have these. I brought them for you. So I went through the whole airplane like that. It's really funny. I was just looking. So they had replaced these panels. Now here it just has ribs, which is incorrect. There's aluminum panels back here, so you can on both sides at the bottom, so you can get to there's a huge bungee cord thing for the tail skid. And of course they took this off when they were on floats.
Right.
They published one photo ever that I've seen with the tail skid on floats. And it was the prototype, and they were training, and everybody after that somehow thinks that's the way it was. Why would you do it?
Yeah.
This thing's about 35 pounds of anchor in the wrong place. At any rate, so they had somebody had replaced this panel back here, and they left it raw aluminum. And I just looked at a painting this morning that somebody did, and all of the planes are painted with aluminum panels. So you know what they were looking at when they copied it.
Yeah.
And it even goes further than that. I was in San Francisco airport one time, and somebody had made a nice big model of it. And so one of my pilot friends had been cruising through there and said, hey, if you get to San Francisco, take a look. There's this great model. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking, and right here, you see these wires, these vertical wires? They pull this whole center section in tension. Well, there was only one on the model, and I went, that's weird. When I got down to Santa Monica, the airplane only has one. So they figured, oh, it only has one, that's what we're going to do. Well, that's not, of course. There are dual wires. So, it's kind of funny. It's like somebody does a magazine article, and then people who are like want to do the next generation of magazine articles go back and read all the magazine articles,
Right.
which is the big sin of writing and all that kind of stuff. You've got to go back to the primary sources.
Yeah.
And primary sources are even a problem. Well, two for instances. We built a rudder to this. I've got the Douglas drawings. Okay? We build the rudder according to the drawings. We go to put it on the airplane, it doesn't fit. The hell? So I go back to the guys. I said, "What's the scoop here? Measure? Huh? You did exactly right." Well, I just happened to be going back to Estonia. I go back there about every year for the last 9-10 years. And so I go back and I look at it, and what do you think? Douglas did the drawings for the rudder, but they didn't build it the way they drew it. I did.
It's just like the Traveler. They've
Yeah.
got a whole set of drawing for Travelers, and there are a lot of mistakes there. They
Well,
did the
you know what
drawings
it
to
is
certify it.
here's what happened is they do the drawing, engineering, comes down to the floor, they start to build it, and it doesn't fit, so they change it to fit.
Right.
Now that never gets back to engineering because the guys on the floor just say, they just don't know what the hell they're doing
They
up
just
there. Those
modify their
engineers.
tooling, and it goes to production. Yeah.
And they didn't make a lot of any of these airplanes really. So the guys on the floor knew how to do it. At any rate, so that's one of the for instances.
How did these drift lines work?
They had. I've got pictures. Actually, I got it at the Air Force Museum of this instrument, which would mount in the cockpit. I've never seen one. I've only seen pictures of it. It's never been a high priority for me trying to build the airplane. But it had like a compass on it, and you could move this thing and get to degrees, and they would shoot across here the drift lines. And apparently, if you're shooting at something back here, like down the line, and it starts moving, the object starts moving across the lines, and you've got take a heading on that, then you can see that you're moving in a direction, you're drifting in that direction, because you're moving left or right of those lines. And how they could figure out what the speed was, I don't know. But I mean, that's the rough and short version of it. Never having done it. Hey, that's what GPS is for. Somebody said, "Oh, are you going to do what they did?" And I said, "No. Why would I do that?" Besides of which, when you're flying now, if you go, like flying around the world, for instance, like in the Super Cub, we had a full IFR Super Cub. And with GPS, we had everything I could get in there. And when we were leaving Transport Canada, we had to have all the instruments for all the approaches in Greenland and Iceland, and they didn't care about Europe. They just cared getting across. So we had to have ADF. We had to have a DME, because they had a DME arc approach into Reykjavik. What else did we have to have? I guess those are the only. They wanted you to have two ADFs, because in the early days, ADF was the instrument. As a matter of fact, they use them in other countries. They still have ADFs. And they're good for, like Diane says, they're good for listening to the radio, and finding lightning.